The sun had not yet risen, but the quarry was already awake. Before there were pyramids, there were stones. And before those stones gleamed beneath the desert sky, they lay embedded in ancient cliffs, massive silent slabs waiting to be disturbed. It is here, at the white limestone quarries of Tura, just across the Nile from what would become the Giza Plateau, that your day begins. You are not a pharaoh. You are not a priest or a scribe. You are a quarryman. The year is somewhere around 2580 BCE. You live in a rectangular mud brick dwelling with a thatched reed roof, nestled beside dozens of identical homes in a dusty camp surrounded by desert. The air is cool in the early morning, dry but not yet biting. You stir on your mat, wrapped in a linen sheet woven from flax, worn thin from years of washing and sun. A pot of barley mash sits near the doorway, left over from last night's meal. Your tools are laid out beside you, basic things by future standards. A copper chisel dulled by yesterday's efforts, a wooden mallet wrapped with a strip of rawhide, and a chunk of dolerite, a black volcanic stone harder than limestone, used for pounding. These tools are not ceremonial or artistic. They are, like you, meant to endure the routine. You rise, wash your face with a splash of river water carried up in an earthen jar the evening before, and chew a small piece of dried date to start the day. Outside, your neighbors do the same. Men stretch their backs. Some cough into the morning wind. A few children run barefoot between huts, chasing each other with strips of palm fronds. One woman balances a jar of beer on her shoulder, taking it toward the communal ovens. No bells ring. There is no horn to signal the start of labor. Instead, there is rhythm. The rhythm of habit. The overseers are already pacing near the edge of the quarry, marking daily assignments on small shards of potter's tracusing red pens dipped in carbon ink. Your name will be assigned a sector of the cliff face. It will be scratched next to a tally mark, a number of expected blocks, a supervisor's initial. Nothing more. You carry your tools up the slope, toward the limestone shelf, where the chalk outlines of future blocks await. These outlines are not ceremonial carvings or artistic etchings. They are faint marks made with crushed red pigment, applied quickly and with little reverence. A good quarryman knows to respect the geometry. A bad quarryman causes waste. The stone under your feet is creamy white, fine-grained, and once polished, it will shimmer in the sun like dried milk. This is the prized Tura limestone, destined for the outer casing of the pyramid. It is softer than granite, but brittle if mishandled. You do not have modern drills or cranes. You have patience. You squat beside your assigned outline and begin to strike. First, the dolerite pounder used to chip grooves around the block. You and your team will make a trench on all sides, sometimes several inches deep, until the block begins to separate itself. The work is not fast, but it is consistent. The ringing sound of dolerite on limestone echoes down the walls of the quarry, forming a kind of stony percussion dot around you. Others do the same. Some work in pairs, one pounding, the other wetting the dust to keep it from choking. A man nearby hums a low tune, something old, repetitive, and without words. Perhaps it is a lullaby turned into a work song. The overseers watch from the shade. They say little, but you feel their presence like a weight on your shoulders. Occasionally, the rhythm is broken. Someone curses as a tool slips. Another yells for water. A sled creaks as it's dragged past, loaded with a freshly cut block. Goats bleat somewhere downwind. These sounds, though scattered, fall into their own kind of lull. Noise without urgency, Action without drama. You think, sometimes, about the purpose of the work. You know the stones are going to the pyramid site at Giza, across the river. You've heard stories of the rising monument, how its base alone stretches hundreds of cubits, how its summit touches the sun, how the pharaoh plans to sleep there forever. But these are distant things. You have not seen the pyramid yourself. You do not even know how they get the blocks up that high. Occasionally, someone claims to have visited the site. They speak of ramps long and winding, stretching around the growing mass. Others say water is used, poured over sand to reduce friction. There's even a story about a man who claimed sound could move stones, that the priests sang or chanted and the blocks shifted of their own accord. No one believes it, but no one fully dismisses it either. You laugh, but then you remember how the wind sometimes whistles through the quarry walls, humming like a breath caught in stone. By mid-morning, you've finished cutting around one block. You switch to the copper chisel now, wedging it into the groove, tapping it with the mallet to loosen the stone. Chips fall away. Dust clings to your arms and face. A colleague helps you pry the block loose. Together, you slide it onto a waiting sledder, simple wooden platform covered in reeds and animal fat to reduce friction. This block will be pulled by men, not animals. Oxen are scarce and expensive. Human labor is plentiful. Ropes are fastened, and the team begins the slow drag toward the staging area. You step aside and drink from a clay jug. The water slightly sweet with residue from its last contents, perhaps beer. A child from the nearby village runs past with a message from the overseer. More blocks are needed by sundown. You nod. There is always more. The pyramid does not wait. And yet, as you crouch to mark your next stone, you feel something like pride. Not for glory or legacy, you will not be remembered, but for the smoothness of the cut, the precision of the line, the knowledge that your hand shaped something that will not erode easily, even when all else turns to sand. It is a quiet pride, the kind that settles behind the ribs and never asks for notice. As the sun climbs and the shadows shorten, you wipe your brow with your tunic and prepare for another groove, another trench, another day spent moving mountains, one chip at a time. You pause, hand on your chisel, and look up at the white cliff wall. How many blocks does it take? And how many men like you, carving, dragging, sweating in silence, does it require to make a tomb for eternity? Could there be another reasoner hidden? Ritual, a forgotten belief driving this endless movement of stone. By the time the sun reached its highest point in the sky, the air above the quarry shimmered with heat. It wavered over the pale stone surfaces like a thin veil of breath. Shadows clung to the base of the cliffs, narrow and precious, and it was in these temporary shelters that the quarrymen of Tura found their brief. Midday pause. You return from dragging your second block of the morning. Your arms ache, dully no sharp pain, just a slow, familiar fatigue that wraps itself around your shoulders like a sleeping cat. You sit in the same spot each day on a smoothed slab beneath a ledge of unfinished limestone, next to two men you've worked beside for years. You share your meal without words. A flat cake of emmer wheat, softened with oil and salt. A pinch of dried coriander leaves. A small clay bowl of thick, cloudy beer. There is no meat. There rarely is someone nearby chews on a roasted onion, its skin blackened over last night's cooking fire. Another man mumbles about a broken chisel. Someone laughs softly at a story about an overseer caught napping. The sounds are hushed, murmured. Even laughter is subdued in this heat. Nobody wants to waste breath. Still, you listen because during these breaks, the most curious stories pass between hands like food. A younger worker leans in and mentions a tale his uncle told him, that in the very center of the pyramid, the pharaoh is already buried, and the rest is just being built around him. Another man says he's heard that the workers at Giza don't just pull stones, but float them on the river. Yes, but also, somehow, over sand. On wooden runners, slick with animal fat and clay. You've seen the fat, of course. Every day, the greasing station near the quarry edge is busy. Large clay pots sit in the shade, each filled with rendered fat from oxen or goats, sometimes mixed with water, sometimes thinned with oil from nuts or fish. It smells strong, especially in the heat, but when spread across the path before a sled, it makes movement easier. You've watched two men slide a full block across greased stone with half the effort it usually takes. Greasing is a respected job, not glamorous, but essential. The workers assigned to it wear thick wraps around their hands and arms to avoid burns and blisters. One of them, you've noticed, whistles as he works alone. Slow tones that echo strangely between the cliff walls. Once, an old man joked that the whistling helped charm the stone. Everyone laughed then, but now and again, when the quarry is quiet and the wind whistles across a ridge, you remember the sound. And you wonder, you finish your food and stretch out on your back, staring up at the cliff wall. The red ochre marks used to outline future cuts look almost like writing from here symbols, runes, messages to the sky. You know they're not. They're just lines, guidelines for your next trench. But still, the human mind makes stories where it can. Before work resumes, you pass by the scribe's tent. It's not really a tent, more of a shaded corner near a small shrine with baskets of papyrus rolls and shards of pottery. The scribes are different from the rest of you. They wear cleaner robes. Their hands are stained not with dirt, but with ink. Their fingers are marked by red cuts, not blisters. Yet their work is just as exhausting in its own way. Each scribe tracks everything. Your name, your team, the number of blocks you cut, the condition of your tools. They keep inventory of copper chisels and dolerite hammers. They record the number of sleds sent downriver. They even note the weather, sometimes especially during flood season. Some say the scribes are like gods of memory, their records eternal. You once saw a mistake in a scribe's tally. He'd marked your team down for 2 fewer blocks than you actually moved. You tried to explain, but he waved you away. Perhaps tomorrow, he said with a dry smile, scratching the wrong number deeper into the shard. There's no appealing a written number. Once it's marked, it may as well be carved in stone. Still, you find the scribes fascinating. They speak of things you don't always understand: stars, temple calendars, the names of foreign lands. One of them showed you a diagram once, a drawing of how blocks were moved across the desert. It had tiny men pulling ropes, ramps made of brick, piles of sand strategically placed to help balance the load. It all seemed so orderly, so simple, but simple things, in practice, rarely are. Back at the work site, the second half of the day begins. This time, you're assigned to assist with shaping. The block you helped cut earlier is being refined. It's not perfectly rectangular, so it needs to be shaved on one side. You do this by tapping a copper chisel along a chalk line, flaking off tiny pieces, one at a time. This work is satisfying. The rhythm soothes the mind. Tap, flake, tap, flake. A colleague weights the surface with a sponge to keep dust down. Another turns the block slightly with a wooden lever to angle the next edge toward you. Occasionally, you pause to sharpen the chisel against a sandstone slab. The overseer comes by and says nothing, but you hear his stylus scratching against pottery behind you. Later, you are called to help with a sled. 4 of you pull the loaded block to the transport ramp, a gentle slope carved into the side of the cliff. The ramp is narrow but smooth, packed with clay and coated in grease. One of the grease workers runs ahead of you, slathering the path with fresh fat using a bundle of woven reeds. The sled slips forward easily at first, then catches. You adjust your grip, grunt, pull harder. The sun hits the side of your face like a hot cloth. Your knees ache, but the sled moves. At the base of the ramp, 2 men wait with ropes to slow its descent. You step aside, breathless, and watch as the block is steered carefully onto a level platform where it will rest overnight. Tomorrow, it will be loaded onto a barge for the river journey to Giza. You stare at it for a long time. It's just a block of stone, but it will become a part of something enormous, something designed to endure wind and war and time itself. And yet, all you will ever know of it is this moment, this task, this brief contact between your hands and its surface. You wipe your face with your sleeve and look back toward the quarry, now a pale blur in the heat. The whistle of the grease worker echoes faintly across the stone. Long, slow notes, rising and falling. You wonder again, could sound really do something here? Was it just rhythm that helped, or resonance? What if they knew something about stone that we've forgotten, something buried not in sand, but in silence? The block you cut yesterday now rests on a wooden sled parked at the base of the quarry slope. The early morning sun casts long shadows across its smooth, chalky surface, revealing tiny chips where the copper chisel struck too deep. You recognize them. They're yours today. You're not cutting. You've been assigned to transport, duty, a task that feels at once more visible and more dangerous. A single slip, a poorly tied rope, or a misplaced foot on the ramp could send thousands of kilograms crashing into the sand. But it is also the most satisfying moment in the work cycle, when the block you carved with your own hands is finally sent on its way toward the pyramid. It begins, as always, with preparation. The sled must be checked for cracks, the ropes tightened. A shallow trench has been prepared, a smooth, greased lane of compacted sand and clay that curves gently down the slope to the riverbank. The team assigned to greasing has been at work since dawn, warming jars of rendered fat near small fires. They spread it across the trench, using brushes made from bundled palm fibers. The grease is pungent, sticky. It clings to your skin and collects flies in the heat. But when applied correctly, it reduces the friction between sled and ground dramatically. Someone once told you that one sled, greased properly, could be pulled by 20 men instead of 60. You believe it. You stand with your team of 4, each of you gripping a thick rope tied to the front of the sled. The overseer gives a nod, and you begin to walk slowly, evenly. At first, the sled barely moves. Then, with a grunt and shift of weight, it begins to slide. There is a specific rhythm to pulling a stone sled. Too fast, and it lurches forward, breaking the line. Too slow, and it sinks into the sand. You've done this before. You lean your full weight backward, keeping the tension in the ropes steady. Behind you, another team walks alongside the sled, guiding it with levers, adjusting its angle whenever it begins to drift off track. The block moves with a whispering sound. It's the sound of stone on sand, smoothed with grease and weight-like. A giant sigh echoing across the desert. As you reach the end of the trench, the sled halts. The next step is trickier. The banks of the Nile are lower here. A wide wooden ramp has been built to lead directly onto a waiting barge flat-bottomed boat, moored to the shore with thick palm ropes. The ramp is supported with mud bricks and wooden beams. You've helped build such ramps before. They require constant maintenance. One weak beam and the entire platform could collapse. A crew of boatmen waits nearby. Their skin is darkened by years of sun and river wind. Their boats are not ornamental, like the gilded barges of the priests. These are work vessels, splintered and dependable. The oars lie flat along the sides, lashed down for now. The sails are furled tight against the mast. The river is calm, moving in wide, sleepy swirls. Loading the stone requires a system. First, you attach new ropes to the back of the sled. These will act as brakes. 2 men on the barge hold them taut, ready to stop the block if it slides too quickly. Then, very slowly, you and your team guide the sled forward, inch by inch, onto the wooden ramp. The boards creak under the weight. The ropes groan. You don't breathe. After 10 agonizing minutes, the sled comes to rest on the barge. The deck sags slightly beneath it, but holds. You exhale. Wooden wedges are hammered into place to prevent movement. More ropes are added. The barge will not leave until several more blocks are loaded. You are done for the day. Another team will escort the vessel when it departs. You sit on the riverbank, wiping your hands on your tunic. The mud is cool here. You scoop some into your palm, letting it trickle through your fingers. The Nile has always been here, long before pyramids, kings, or even spoken language. It flows without urgency, without memory, but it is the artery of the work. Without it, there would be no pyramids. You've heard stories about boats tipping midstream, about crocodiles, about blocks that slipped into the water and vanished forever. You've never seen it yourself, but the river feels bottomless, secretive. Some say there are currents that move beneath the visible surface, silent and strong, like intentions that never rise to speech. One of the boatmen wanders over and sits beside you. He tells you that the stones are taken across, then floated on small canals dug straight to the Giza site. Others say they're rolled through the desert. But he insists on the canal route. He mentions something strange, that certain priests chant during loading. Not prayers, exactly, but tones. Long, drawn-out syllables. He swears the tone is important. He says one chant is for steady movement, another for lifting, another for calming the stone. You smile. It sounds fanciful. But then again, you've seen stranger things. You've watched a man whistle a stone into place. Not literally, of course, but the sound, the rhythm of it, made the motion easier. Somehow later, you return to camp, where workers are eating in clusters beneath the dusk sky. The air smells of garlic and lentils. You chew your meal slowly, listening to the chatter. Someone is reciting a poem, something about the pyramids' peak touching the stars. Another man mentions a recent death, a cutter caught beneath a crumbling ledge. It happened quietly. A moment of silence passes. Then the voices return. That night, as you lie on your mat, you think about the stone now floating downriver. You wonder what part of the pyramid it will become: a corner, a casing block, a hidden chamber wall. And you wonder again, how did they know how to place every block so precisely? How did the alignment remain perfect without tools we now consider essential? Could rhythm, the rhythm of footsteps, of rope pulls, of chants have played a role in guiding these stones from one world to the next? The block you helped quarry and load 2 days ago now rests beside hundreds of others at the foot of a rising monument. Its surface gleams faintly in the desert sun, already dulled by wind-blown grit. From a distance, the Giza Plateau looks like an open wound in the landscape, an unnatural rise of stone and dust atop a bed of ochre sand. But up close, it's a city of labor, organized, constant, remarkably quiet. Despite the thousands of people moving across it, you have been rotated, here for the week, away from the quarry. It is common. Workers are moved between sites in regular cycles, quarrying, transporting, shaping, hauling, and fitting. You are no longer just a quarryman. Today, you are part of the building crew. The workers' village at Giza is not what many outsiders imagine. It is not a crude camp of tents or holes in the sand. It is a permanent settlement with rectangular mud brick houses arranged along compacted pathways. Each house shelters a crew of 4 to 10 men, often organized by region or skill. You share. You're dwelling with 2 cutters from Tura, a stonemason from Saqqara, and a rope weaver who specializes in binding sled runners. You do not know each other well, but you speak the same language of calloused hands and tired eyes. The village is clean, surprisingly so. Waste is collected daily and hauled to separate pits. Bread ovens are shared among houses. There is a small clinic where herbal poultices are applied to injuries, and a scribe's tent where labor records are kept. Near the center of the settlement stands a large kitchen called the gallery where stews bubble in clay pots and bread bakes in stacked ovens, their walls blackened from years of use. Meals here are better than at the quarry. You were given lentils, garlic, onions, and even salted fish brought in from the river. On good days, there is a fig or 2, split between 10. Beer flows in abundance, thicker, more fermented, but still drinkable. It dulls the ache in your legs. At night, the plateau itself is vast. From where you work, the half-built pyramid rises before you like a tilted horizon, its layers arranged in orderly steps. At any time, hundreds of men move across it, dragging sleds, hammering chisels, chanting to coordinate lifts. The ramps curl around the structure, wide enough for loaded sleds and lined with wooden beams to prevent collapse. Your task this week is shaping. You work at the base of the pyramid, where rough blocks from Tura are refined before being hauled up the ramp. The shaping platform is long and flat, with dozens of workstations. Each pair of workers is assigned a block. The goal is not perfection, but consistency. You mark your block with red ochre, then begin to shave it down with a copper chisel. Your partner weights the stone to soften the surface and keep dust to a minimum. You chip slowly, rhythmically, letting the shape emerge through repetition. There is no hurry. Nearby, a group of fitters practice test placements, checking how 2 stones lie against one another. They use thin reeds to test for gaps, inserting them along seams and noting where light passes through. A block with too many gaps is sent back. There is no tolerance for wasted stone. Every part of the pyramid must fit tightly, not just for strength, but for the symbolic integrity of the structure. It is said that the pyramid represents the primeval mound, the first land to emerge from the waters of chaos. Its lines must be straight, its corners aligned with the cardinal directions, its angles sacred. The alignment is achieved not with compasses, but with the stars. At night, the surveyors use plumb lines and water-filled trenches to mark true north, then align the pyramid's base accordingly. During the day, they use sun shadows cast from vertical sticks, gnomons, to verify the placement of new blocks. You've seen these rituals. They seem simple, but their precision is uncanny. Once you asked a foreman how the measurements stayed consistent across thousands of stones. He looked at you and said, "Because the stars do not move." Each evening, before supper, a priest visits the shaping platform. He carries a censer, burning resin and myrrh. He walks slowly between the rows of stones, chanting in a low, steady tone. The smell is sharp but comforting. The chant is even more soothing, its cadence, steady, each syllable long and drawn out. The workers pause, then resume their tasks. With new calm, it is said that the chant blesses the stone, making it more willing to be shaped. You're not sure what willing means when it comes to rock, but you notice that the chant helps your breathing. Your strokes become steadier, and sometimes the chisel glides more easily than you expect. One evening, as you sit outside your dwelling, drinking beer with your crewmates, the rope weaver tells a story. He says that some stones hum when moved, that deep within the pyramid there are chambers where sound echoes in strange ways, that when priests chant inside them, the walls respond not loudly, but with a subtle tremor, like a bowl, gently touched. You laugh at the story, but later, lying on your mat, you recall the way the grease workers whistle at the quarry, the way the priests chant eases your hand, the way sound sometimes feels like pressure on your skin. You close your eyes and imagine the finished pyramid, smooth, white, precise. You picture the blocks you've touched your stone, cut and shaped, resting near the base or halfway up. You wonder if, someday, someone will stand atop it and look out over the desert, never knowing your name but seeing your work. And just before sleep takes you, a question lingers. What if it wasn't just labor? What if the whole process, cutting, shaping, moving, chanting, was part of a forgotten science? A kind of harmony between man, stone, and sound. Could it be that every hammer strike, every chant, every breath, played a role in lifting the weight of eternity? The pyramid looks smooth from afar, neat rows of massive blocks, stacked like a staircase reaching toward the sun. But up close, it is a puzzle. Thousands of limestone and granite pieces, each uniquely placed, must arrive not just in sequence, but in near-perfect alignment. To achieve this, the Egyptians turned to a quiet but powerful tool, symbols, before a block is placed. Even before it is lifted up the ramp, it is marked. Today, you are assigned to the marking yard. You're no longer cutting or shaping. You are helping the scribes and planners, those who ensure that every stone knows exactly where it belongs. It is early, and the yard is still cool. The ground is flattened sand, packed hard by hundreds of footsteps, dozens of shaped limestone. Blocks lie in rows, like sleeping beasts, each waiting to be summoned into place. Beside them, a group of scribes kneel with pots of ink and red brushes. They work in silence, bending over each stone as if whispering secrets into its surface. Your job is to bring them fresh ink, clean brushes, and soft cloths. You do not write, but you observe. The ink is made from crushed charcoal mixed with gum and water, stored in small clay pots. The brushes are simply sharpened reeds cut at an angle. You watch as the scribes dip the reeds and paint simple numbers, team marks, directional glyphs on the faces of each stone. The writing is quick but precise. Some stones are marked with crew names: Team of the West, Strong Arms, of Ra, or Sons of the Quarry. Others bear simple geometric signs, circles, squares, lines indicating angle or orientation. A few carry a single word: north, ramp, inner, ready. These are not decorations, they are logistics, a language of construction later. These marks will be matched against master plan's massive scrolls or wooden boards stored in a tent near the ramp. These documents show the pyramid in layers, each row of blocks plotted like a grid. When a new block arrives, workers check its markings and know exactly where it belongs, how far up, which direction it faces, what part of the structure it supports. The system is surprisingly elegant. Even the ramps are marked. Each segment has its own sign, so that haulers know which block goes where, which slope to ascend, which angle to approach. You hear a story from one of the scribes, a quiet man with blue ink stains on his fingers. He tells you that one day a stone was placed with no marks at all. It caused confusion. No one knew where it came from or where it was meant to go. It sat in the yard for weeks. Some said it had been delivered by mistake. Others claimed it was a test. Eventually, it was used to repair a collapsed section of a storage building. No one ever spoke of it again. But the scribe smiles and says, even a lost stone finds its place. Later in the day, you assist with organizing the blocks into loading groups. Each set of marked stones is placed on a sled and prepared for the ramp. The teams double-check the inscriptions, tying scrolls to the sleds with matching symbols. If anything goes missing en route, the scroll acts as proof of purpose. One stone, you notice, has a series of odd lines, more than usual. You ask the nearest scribe what it means. He explains that it's part of the king's chamber, a core block. It requires special orientation and must align with the stars above. The marks indicate its position relative to Sirius, the star of rebirth. You stare at the stone. It looks like any other, but apparently it matters more. You remember the chants of the priests, the rhythm of the grease workers, the precision of the fitters, all of it connected. A whisper of logic carved into the chaos. In the late afternoon, you visit the marking tent. Inside, rows of stone flakes and broken pottery, shards of strokera, scattered across a table. They contain scribbled notes, small drawings of stone shapes, work assignments, corrections. A young apprentice is carefully copying one ostracon onto papyrus, while a master scribe compares it to the main plan. This, you realize, is the hidden machinery of the pyramid. Not just brute strength, but written thought, planning, a paper, memory. As the sun lowers, the workers begin to cover the inked stones with damp cloths to prevent fading. Tomorrow, they'll be hauled up the ramp and placed by masons who may never know your name or the scribe's, but who will follow the marks as faithfully as stars. Before you leave, you touch the inked surface of one block. The symbol says N5ist, slope layer 30. You don't know what it means exactly, but you know it's going somewhere. That's enough. And as you walk back to the village, you find yourself thinking, is it the stones that build the pyramid? Or the meaning written on them? Could the symbols be more than instructions? Perhaps even blessings? Or are they echoes of a deeper logic we no longer understand, hidden beneath layers of stone and ink? From the base of the pyramid, the rising structure resembles a mountain carved by steady hands, block by block, line by line, almost too precise for human effort. But if you follow the dusty path that curls alongside it, you'll come upon one of the most debated features of this entire endeavor. The ramp stopped to move stone, upward stones that weigh as much as a pair of oxen, tied to a full cart you cannot simply lift. There are no cranes, no pulleys strong enough for such loads. You use earth, an angle, and time. Today your assignment is on ramp maintenance. It is not glamorous, it is not quiet, but it is important. The ramp is longer than most can imagine. It extends straight out from the pyramid's base, and then, farther up, it winds around the structure like a snake climbing the back of a giant. Some believe there are two ramps, one straight for early construction and another that wraps as the pyramid grows taller. Others claim there are hidden ramps inside, buried within the stone itself. Narrow tunnels guiding each block upward like veins inside a mountain. You do not know the truth, but you know the dust. Each morning, workers haul baskets of sand and crushed gravel to the ramp surface. The incline must be maintained with just the right friction, smooth enough for movement, rough enough for control. Too soft, and the sled sinks too hard, and it slides too fast. Your job today is spreading layers of sand and clay, then packing them tight using flat stone sleds pulled by teams of men. These compacting sleds are like upside-down tables, weighted with rocks, dragged back and forth to create a surface strong enough for the real sleds. As you walk the ramp, you notice how it subtly shifts. Some parts are steeper, some curve gently, to account for turns. The edges are lined with wooden guide rails, often replaced due to wear. Rope barriers keep crews from wandering too close to the edge. A fall from the upper sections would mean a quiet disappearance into the sand far below. Occasionally, you spot large wooden rollers buried near the base of the ramp. You've heard. They were once used to help slide the first blocks upward before ramps were fully constructed. Some workers insist rollers are still used in places where the slope flattens out. But the most common sight is sweat and sandals. Hundreds of feet stamp along the ramps, daily haulers, greasers, guides, all working in harmony. There are chants for lifting, chants for pausing, chants for stepping in unison. Haw, haw, low and rhythmic, not hurried, not strained, almost musical. You ask an older worker why they chant. He shrugs. Because when we do, the stone listens. He laughs, then adds, or at least, it doesn't fight us as hard. When a new block begins its ascent, it becomes the center of attention. Teams align themselves at its ropes, pushing from behind, pulling from ahead. Overseers pace alongside, shouting adjustments. One worker sprinkles water on the path to settle the dust. Another walks ahead, singing a slow, wordless melody. As the sled groans up the ramp, you watch it lean slightly to one side, caught by a ripple in the surface. The haulers adjust. Someone slaps the rope twice, a signal to pause. You hurry forward with a clay bowl, pouring more water across the track. The sled continues, straightening, slowly rising. This happens all day. Sometimes you hear whispers of more exotic theories. A priest muttered once that they no longer needed to push the higher stones. That once the base was complete, the pyramid pulled the rest upward by divine magnetism. Another man swore he saw a block float once, just slightly, during a chant, "Don't know." One believes him. But no one forgets it either. During your break, you sit on a shaded part of the lower ramp and sip lukewarm beer. You glance toward the peak of the pyramid, now nearly level with the ramp's highest turn. You wonder what it looks like from up there. Some workers say you can see the curve of the earth. Others say it's just more dust and wind. But all agree it's quiet at the top. The wind is constant, the view endless. The pyramid breathes differently up there. Near sunset, you help reinforce a section of ramp wall that has started to crumble. The dry earth shifts easily. You pack it with clay, pressing the wall back into form. As you work, you think about the layers of sand beneath your feet, placed by men like you, day after day, so that stones can rise. The ramp is not beautiful. It is not permanent. When the pyramid is finished, it will be dismantled, its parts scattered or reused. But without it, the monument would never exist. It is a tool, a massive, forgettable tool that holds the dream of eternity. Before the end of your shift, you help guide a final stone toward its rest point. As it crests the ramp, something strange happens. The wind picks up slightly, a chant rises louder, and for a brief moment, as the sled slides into place, the block almost seems to float, not truly, not weightlessly, but just barely separated. From resistance, you feel it pass through your fingertips, and as it settles into place with a soft, echoing thud, you ask yourself, was it just technique, or something else? Could these ramps carry more than stone could? They conduct rhythm, intention, even sound itself, all ascending toward the sun like a hymn carved into dust. At the heart of every pyramid is a mystery, not beneath it, not inside it, but at the very top. A small, smooth, shining capstone known to the builders as the Benbenet, to the priests as the Pyramidion, and to most simply as the final stone. You've heard whispers of it ever since you began working the ramps. Some say it's made of solid gold, others of fine limestone polished so brightly it reflects the sun like a mirror. Some say it was placed by the gods themselves. But now, months into your rotation at Giza, the Pyramidion is finally arriving. You see it for the first time in the early dawn haze, cradled in a special wooden sled wrapped with linen padding. It's smaller than you imagined, no taller than a man, but nearly perfect in shape. For triangular faces, gently sloped, meeting at a point that catches even the weakest light. The stone is smoother than any you've ever touched. Its angles are exact. There are no chisel scars, no chips, no tool marks. Whoever shaped it did so slowly, obsessively, perhaps across seasons. A masterwork, a symbol, a secret. Only the most experienced handlers are assigned to its transport. You watch from a respectful distance as they wrap the stone again, secure it with ropes, and begin its final ascent up the winding ramp one carefully built just for this occasion, narrower than the main causeway but reinforced with wooden beams and flanked by tall guide rails. The air is strangely silent as it moves. No shouting, no calls. Only the rustle of sandals in sand and the soft creak of ropes. You join the followers trailing behind. Not workers this time, but watchers, laborers, priests, overseers, even a few scribes. All are here to see the final moment, the one that will cap the decades of effort. The ramp is steeper now. You place your foot carefully, mindful of the shifting surface. The pyramid seems different, this close to its crown, not larger, but calmer. The wind sings in low, steady tones against the stone. The sky looks impossibly wide as you climb. You recall something an old priest said during a meal. The pyramid is not for the dead. It is for remembering the shape of silence. You didn't understand it then. Now, you begin to dot at the summit. Platform, a flat square, has been left open. The top tier of blocks forms a small pedestal, perfectly centered. This is where the Benbonet will sit, the stone that touches the sky. Two priests step forward. One carries a bowl of scented oil. The other holds a palm frond dipped in ochre. They circled the capstone 3 times, chanting under their breath, just audible over the wind. The chant is unfamiliar, slower, deeper, less like a song, more like a breath drawn out across centuries. The handlers lift the stone, not with strength alone, but with preparation. Wooden levers, thick pads, coordinated pushes. It takes time, but slowly, steadily, the pyramidion rises and slides into place. The moment it settles, barely a click. More a shift of weight, there is a pause. Everyone is quiet. The wind stops, and for a second, it feels as though the pyramid itself sighs. You exhale. You didn't know you were holding your breath. There is no celebration, no clapping, only stillness. Then, the chanting resumes quieter. Now, the final verse. You sit on the edge of the platform, legs dangling over stone placed years ago. The view stretches from the green banks of the Nile to the dry ridges beyond Saqqara. Far below, the workers' village looks like a child's drawing in the sand. Smoke rises gently from the cook fires. Beside you, a scribe makes a final notation on a clay shard. He writes only 5 words, the point of the sun. You ask him if that's the name of the pyramidion. He shrugs. No, he says, it's the name of the feeling. You nod slowly, unsure if you understand. But maybe it doesn't matter. Later that day, the narrow ramp will be dismantled, section by section, so that no one climbs higher again. The pyramid is complete. All the ramps, markings, and tools will disappear. Only the stone will remain, and at the very tip, the smooth, shining memory of the work, quiet, small, and perfect. As you descend the ramp for the last time, you look back and ask yourself, was it really just geometry and grit, or something older than either? Could a pyramid remember sound, hold breath, or echo intentions carved into stone? Maybe the final block was never about weight, but about balance. A silence so precise it touches the sun. Beneath the gleaming tiers of limestone and granite lies a quiet place. A place most never see. A place not built for the sun. The outer pyramid rises in light, but the true heart of it lives in shadow inside corridors, chambers, shafts, and sealed rooms that were shaped just as carefully as the stones stacked in the open today. You are assigned to the inner works. It begins with a narrow passage, sloping downward from an entrance cut high on the pyramid's face. You duck low as you enter, the ceiling pressing down only inches above your back. The air is cooler here still, dry and close. Your footsteps echo against the stone. The floor slopes steeply, smooth from generations of sandaled feet. Torches are set at intervals, their smoke curling up toward small vents carved long ago. The smell is earthy dust, limestone, faint traces of oil and sweat. Time has no sound here, only breath. The corridor straightens, then opens abruptly into a cramped space, the so-called descending passage. From here, the internal blueprint divides. Upward leads to the grand gallery and the king's chamber. Downward to the subterranean chamber, you begin your day going deeper. The path down narrows into stone that feels older, rougher, unfinished. It's said this chamber may have been the original burial site before plans changed. Some believe it was abandoned. Others say it was a deliberate decoy designed to mislead robbers or protect something sacred. The chamber itself is plain. A low ceiling, chisel marks still visible. Dust never leaves. The floor is uneven, the air cold. There are no symbols here, no decoration, only a carved niche in one wall and a small pit in the floor, whose purpose no one fully understands. You sit on the edge of that pit and listen. Nothing, but not quite silence either. There's a faint resonance like standing inside a large drum, or at the edge of a low humming bowl. You wonder if it's the pyramid breathing. Later, you are called upward. The grand gallery is next. This passageway is unlike any other, tall, steep, majestic. The ceiling rises in steps, one over the other, until the walls seem to fold inward, like hands pressed together. Stone benches line either side. At the top, a short tunnel leading to the king's chamber. Your crew carries tool-smooth stone rollers, copper measuring rods, and wrapped instruments. You're not here to construct, but to inspect. A priest has requested acoustic readings. You don't know what that means exactly, but he carries a drum and a conch shell. He walks in silence. Once inside the king's chamber, the space opens fully. It is not grand ornamentally, in scale and silence. The walls are red granite, polished smooth. The ceiling is flat, heavy, pressed against 5 hidden layers of massive granite beams, stacked above it the relieving chambers. The priest walks to the center, stands by the empty stone box. The so-called sarcophagus and begins tapping it lightly. The sound that emerges is strange, deep, ringing, almost metallic. Not hollow, but not solid either. You feel it in your bones more than your ears. Then he chanced. It's the same tone you heard months ago on the ramp. A long, flat syllable, held for several breaths. He pauses, then taps the stone again. The sound changes, slightly. He nods, satisfied. You whisper to your crewmate, "What is he doing?" He shrugs, "Measuring something we forgot." Later, while recording measurements, on a plaster tablet, you notice small red marks along the chamber's base. Not decorative, just lines and numbers. Possibly quarry marks or placement guides. One line, barely visible, curls upwards slightly. You trace it with your finger and wonder, was it a mistake, a signature, or a symbol whose meaning has been lost? Your final task of the day is to crawl into one of the upper, relieving chambers, accessed by a narrow shaft, barely wide enough for your shoulders. It is a hidden place, never meant to be seen. The stones here are massive, unadorned, suspended above the king's chamber like a stone shield. You lie flat, your lamp flickering against the granite ceiling. The silence here is absolute. Not even the wind dares to enter in this hidden room. You imagine the pyramid not as a tomb or a monument, but as a container for pressure, for memory, for stillness. Every block here holds the weight of the world above it, and as you slide back down the shaft, back into light and dust and air, a thought occurs. Were these chambers built only for weight relief, or for resonance? Could sound confined within such precision have served a function we no longer remember, guiding the living or honoring the dead in frequencies long since fallen silent? The pyramid does not stand alone, even as its polished flanks shimmer under the desert sun and its perfect angles stretch toward the sky. It is only one piece of something larger, something woven from stone, sand, and ceremony. Today, your duties take you beyond the monument itself, into the sprawling structures that orbit it. The pyramid complex, from the base of the pyramid, a paved walkway more than 500 meters long, leads downward in a gentle slope. This is the causeway. On either side, low stone walls flank the path, their sides once decorated with vivid painted scenes. Most have faded, but a few still show outlines. Boats on the Nile, offerings of bread and cattle. Lines of figures with arms raised as you walk. Along the causeway, you join others carrying small offerings, bundles of herbs, jars of beer, strips of linen. They are not for the dead, not yet, They are for the rituals performed each morning and evening at the temple that sits at the far end, the Valley Temple. It rests at the edge of where desert meets the fertile plain, not far from the waters of the Nile, built from massive blocks of granite and limestone. It is simple but precise. Its outer face is smooth, angled slightly inward, like a doorway that never closes. Inside, the air is cool, still, smelling faintly of incense and earth. You enter through a narrow hall lined with columns. The floor is polished smooth, worn down by centuries of feet. There is no chanting here, only soft footsteps and the occasional murmur of a priest reciting from memory. In the center of the temple stands a low platform once, a staging ground for the body of the pharaoh as it arrived from the river. This was the beginning of his final journey, the point where man became God. After embalming in the house of purification, the royal body would be floated across the Nile and brought here, received in silence. Priests would anoint it, wrap it, chant over it. Then it would begin the slow ascent up the causeway to the mortuary temple at the base of the pyramid. You follow that path now in reverse, heading from the Valley Temple up toward the Great Tomb. The mortuary temple is more ornate, busier. Its outer courtyard is open to the sun, but the inner rooms are shadowed, cool, fragrant with cedarwood and resin. You are assigned to sweep the outer walkways and polish the walls. A humble task, but one that lets you observe, in one room, priests pour water over a stone altar, invoking the names of ancestors. In another, scribes record grain deliveries offerings from nearby estates dedicated to the pharaoh's eternal sustenance. These deliveries happen daily, even years after the king's death. For a dead king is never truly absent. He is simply moved to a different realm. You step into the offerings hall, where statues of the pharaoh stand against the walls, each carved with slight variations, different facial expressions, different postures. It is said that each one houses a car, a soul fragment, ready to receive offerings for eternity. In a side chamber, a low bench holds small tools, incense spoons, alabaster bowls, bundles of papyrus scrolls, each one part of the ongoing ritual that binds the complex together. This temple, the causeway, the pyramid, they are not separate. They are a map of the afterlife drawn in stone. One priest, older, quiet, his voice barely above a whisper, explains it simply. The pyramid points to heaven. The causeway connects heaven to earth, and the temple feeds the bridge. At sunset, a procession passes through the complex. You stand aside as it moves, priests in white linen, workers with baskets of figs, and children carrying palm branches. They head toward the main altar to perform the daily renewal rite. The steps are simple, unhurried. Measured, you notice a rhythm in their walk, in the way they breathe, in the way the sandals slide across polished stone. A rhythm that feels familiar. You think of the chants on the ramp, of the drum in the king's chamber, of the whispering sound beneath the substructure. What if the entire complex was meant to be moved through like a score of music? Each chamber, a note, each offering a beat, each column a pause. And what if the pyramid wasn't just the final destination, but the crescendo? That night, as the stars begin to pierce the velvet sky and the silhouette of the pyramid turns black against indigo, you sit on the temple steps and let the quiet wrap around you. A breeze rustles the palm trees along the canal. Far off, a night bird cries once and then falls silent. You look back at the pyramid, no longer bright, but solemn. waiting dot, and as your head grows heavy and the stars shimmer above, you wonder, did the builders truly mean only to honor the dead, or to compose something larger, living symphony of stone, air movement, and silence, still humming faintly thousands of years later, long after the last block was placed and the pyramidion crowned, after the chants faded and the priests moved on to newer temples. One thing remained beneath the stones: names, not royal names carved in gold, but small, red names brushed hastily, in ink on the inner walls of chambers never meant to be seen. Names like friends of Khufu, the drunkards of Menkaure, and the vigorous gang. They appear where no decorative carvings exist behind finished walls, on hidden beams, under the roof blocks of relieving chambers. Some are just a few hieroglyphs. Others are drawing stick figures, pulling ropes, crude boats, even animals, with exaggerated ears and human eyes. No one told you these names existed. You only found them because a worker dropped a torch in a ventilation shaft, and you were small enough to climb after it. Inside the narrow space above the king's chamber, crouched beneath a stone slab that has not moved in 4,000 years, you saw it, a red smear that, up close, resolved into careful symbols. Faded but deliberate. You told no one. At first, later, while helping clear rubble in a chamber north of the pyramid's base. You saw it again this time, not hidden, just overlooked. A short phrase scrawled in red just above the floor, the enduring ones. You pointed it out to a scribe. He smiled, nodding. They were proud, he said. They wanted to be remembered. There is no monument to the quarrymen or the sled pullers or the dust sweepers. No cartouche names the one who fitted the block that now holds up the sky. And yet, their marks remain fleeting but fierce. You begin to look for them everywhere. At the ramp's foot, on the underside of a discarded sled. In the village storehouse, etched in charcoal above a door. Quiet sleepers, west wing. On a water jar, long emptied and cracked, a doodle of a man chasing a goose. Sometimes the names are functional. Group 1 to be upper tier or south ramp supporters, but others are affectionate, strange, or humorous. Stubborn oxen, children of the flood. Those who sweat in silence. They tell you something no inscription on a temple ever does. That this place was built not by faceless masses, but by people who joked, got tired, argued, and named themselves silly things to pass the time. People who lived here, worked here, and sometimes died here at the workers' cemetery. A short walk from the pyramid's edge. The tombs are small but carefully built. Shallow shafts, simple markers. Occasionally, a stone stela bearing the faint outline of a man holding tools. These were not slaves. They were laborers, some, honored with proper burials and offerings. You stand before one low grave, the inscription nearly erased by wind and time, but a line remains. He moved the stones with his breath and his back. The gods heard both. You wonder who wrote it, a friend, a priest, the man himself. You begin carrying a piece of red ochre in your pouch, just a sliver wrapped in linen. You don't know why. Maybe for when the time comes to leave your own mark, somewhere small and hidden. One evening, you return to the ramp alone. The sun is just touching the horizon, painting the desert in pale gold. The pyramid glows faintly. You sit near a stone you helped shape months ago. You run your fingers along its edge, still sharp. You take out the red ochre on the back side of the stone where no visitor will ever look. You write in the smallest script you can manage. I was here. I pulled. I sang. I watched the sky rise with the stone. It is not poetry. but it is yours. And as the wind settles and the light fades, you realize the pyramid was never meant to tell one story, but thousands. Each stone a sentence, each mark a whisper. Could it be that memory isn't carved in monuments at all, but in the quiet work, the laughter, and the red ink left in the dust of forgotten builders? The last chant was spoken long ago. The final offering burned to ash. The pyramid stands still, but the builders are gone. Generations pass, and the complex begins to shift. Slowly, quietly, like a breath held too long. You no longer work on the pyramid. That time has passed. You are now a caretaker of what remains. Your sandals crunch across the sand, now drifting up against the lower tiers. The polished casing stones that once gleamed white in the sun had mostly vanished. Some were taken to build mosques and palaces along the Nile. Others cracked from centuries of earthquakes, sliding down the slope in silence. You walk the perimeter, tracing stones that haven't moved for 4,000 years. They are rougher now, dull but firm. You run your hand over one of the few casing stones still in place, smooth, cold, oddly clean. The angle still perfect. No moss grows here, no vines cling. Only time. The mortuary temple is nearly gone. Just a scatter of foundations remain, their outlines barely visible in the sand. The valley temple is buried beneath layers of debris for 1,000 years, then uncovered accidentally by a farmer digging for water. The causeway too is broken. Once a sacred path, now a line of crumbling blocks leading nowhere. But the pyramid endures. You climb part way up the base, not far, just a few levels. The view is still generous. From here, you see what has changed. The river has moved, retreating westward. Villages have shifted. The workers' town is gone, replaced by open desert, but still, travelers come. Some arrive from nearby cities, hoping to see the tomb of the God King. Others come from faraway Greeks, Persians, Romans seeking answers, measurements, even treasure. They crawl through the passageways like curious ants, touching the walls, scratching their names beside those of the forgotten builders. A Greek scholar once asked you, how did they lift the stones? You smiled, slowly. He laughed, then wrote something in his scrolls. Perhaps your words will reach Athens, or Alexandria, or some library far from here. Sometimes you accompany the visitors inside, pointing out corridors, explaining the purpose of niches and shafts. Some nod politely, others scoff, a few simply stand and stare, whispering to themselves. One man struck the granite sarcophagus with a metal rod, listening for echoes. You asked him what he was searching for. Truth, he said. You said nothing in the king's chamber. The air remains unchanged, cool, dense, the red granite still smooth. The resonant hum, barely noticeable but always present. Some who enter the chamber grow quiet. Others speak loudly, as though afraid of silence. A few press their ears to the stone. You let them. The pyramid is patient. You notice the graffiti. Greek letters, Latin names, early Arabic scrolls. Over the centuries, the pyramid became a canvas for those trying to leave a trace, even if they couldn't lift a single stone. But the red ink of the builders still lingers, hidden beneath beams and inside shafts. Unseen, but stronger somehow. Not carved, not loud, just ... present. You take note of the damage. Chipped blocks, missing stones, broken doorways. Some from time, some from men. One corner of the pyramid collapsed slightly after a distant quake. The stones shifted with a sound like distant thunder. For days, Dust rose into the air like smoke from a sleeping god, but nothing fell further. The rest held the base, remains as true as the day it was laid. You sit beside it now, resting against the western face. The sun sets behind you, casting a long shadow that reaches all the way to the canal. You close your eyes and listen. The wind moves softly across the desert. The pyramid does not speak, but it breathes. And in that breath there is a hum like a memory, or a name spoken so often it becomes silence. You open your eyes. Somewhere beneath these stones, a name written in red ink still lingers. Perhaps it was yours, and as the stars begin to appear, scattered like old workers across the sky, you wonder, does the pyramid remember its makers, or only their echoes? Can sound, once sung into stone, outlast even its singers? Maybe what was built here was never just a tomb, but a rhythm set into earth, a monument meant not to be understood, but to be heard. The wind moves gently across the Giza plateau, brushing over stones laid thousands of years ago. The pyramid no longer glows the way it once did. Its white casing stones are gone. Its capstone missing, but still it stands. Still it hums. You sit alone this evening, not as a worker, not as a caretaker, not as a scribe, but simply as a listener, a witness. There is no ceremony tonight, no visitors, no chants, only stillness and moonlight. The pyramid towers above you, familiar yet unknowable. Every edge, every tear, every line etched into your memory. But still, strange like an old song whose lyrics you've forgotten, but whose tune you remember in your bones. You close your eyes and listen at first. There is nothing, then, very faintly, the stone begins to speak, not in words, but in sensations. A warmth in your chest, a shiver along your arms, a sense that something larger is being whispered. Very slowly, you think of all the ideas people have whispered about this place. That sound moved the stones. That chants lifted granite. That vibrations carried blocks up ramps. That the very geometry of the pyramid amplified intention. None of it has ever been proven. None of it has ever been disproven. What you do know is this: sound was always there, in the pulling chants, in the creak of sleds, in the pounding of copper against limestone, in the song of sandals scuffing dust, in the final echo when the pyramidion touched its crown. Maybe that was the secret. Not levitation, not magic, just rhythm. A rhythm so steady, so practiced, so human, that it blurred the line between effort and ease. You think back to your first day on the ramp, terrified, sweating, carrying baskets of clay and sand. You remember the chants of the hauling crews, ha, ha, the hypnotic unity of 50 men pulling as one. Was it the chant that moved the stone? Or was it the stone that gave the chant its purpose? Now, with your body stilled and your heart slowing in the warm night air, you wonder, did the builders know they were creating a monument? Or were they just following the beat of something older? Perhaps the pyramid didn't begin as a plan. Perhaps it began as a sound, a drum beat, a breath, a word. The first stone lifted in time with that sound, then the next, and eventually it grew. Not just higher, but deeper. Because under every layer of limestone, there is memory, there is effort, there is listening. You rise slowly, knees creaking like worn wood, and begin to walk along the base of the pyramid. Each footstep a tiny echo. You pause at the northwest corner, the one where the early red graffiti is hidden beneath a slab. You touch the surface. You can't read the name anymore, but you know it was there. You whisper, "I remember," not because you must, not because history asked you to, but because sound once passed through this place, and you were lucky enough to be near it, at the very center of the pyramid. Deep inside lies a stone box, empty, undecorated. Some call it a sarcophagus, some call it a resonator, some believe it was never meant to be filled at all, only heard. You imagine lying inside it, arms crossed, eyes closed, not as a corpse, but as a listener. A human tuning fork waiting for some forgotten hum to return. And in that image, you smile, not because it's true, but because it's beautiful. The stars are bright now, silver pinpricks in a sky, so ancient it feels like a ceiling you once built. The air is quiet. A faint breeze lifts a grain of sand and carries it over the ramp, over the foundation, over the causeway that leads nowhere. And you hear, just for a moment, a familiar rhythm. Huh, huh. But there is no one there. Only the pyramid. Only the stone. Only the sound. And as you sit one last time beside this impossible monument, you ask yourself, what if this was never just a building? What if it was a song sung slowly in stone, meant not to be understood, but to be felt? Long after the singers are gone,